Wayne and Carrie, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can hear you.
The Open Public Meetings Act statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest are discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Ridgefield Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Bergen Record, Municipal Building, Board of Education offices, and district website. Public participation instructions. Public participation will be conducted both in person and virtually through Zoom. All public will be muted throughout the meeting. Public participation comments are limited to 5 minutes. The public will be able to both speak and be seen by the board when participating virtually, telephonically, via Zoom. Individuals participating virtually that wish to make comments during public participation will need to raise their hand by clicking the blue hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Individuals participating by telephone that wish to make comments during public participation will need to hit *9 on their telephone to raise their hand. The business administrator, board secretary will then unmute individuals one at a time to speak in the order that their hand was raised. And take the roll call. Mr. Feitros?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Mrs. MacNeill?
Here.
Dr. Martinez?
Here.
Mrs. Orth?
Here.
Mrs. Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Verselli?
Here.
Mr. Cathcart?
Here.
And President Fernandez.
Here. At this time, we'd like to move the minutes for the last, what is it, 2 or 3 board meetings?
It's actually 16th, March 2nd, March 16th, and March 23rd. I have a second?
Second.
Cathcart?
Yes.
First of all, let me ask if there are any questions on the minutes. Okay, seeing none. Mr. Cathcart?
Yes.
Mrs. MacNeill?
Yes.
Mr. Feitros?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Dr. Martinez? Mrs.
Yes.
Orth?
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Verselli?
Yes.
And President Fernandez.
Yes. Okay, moving on to communications. Moving forward to committee reports, I'd like to start it off with faculties and programs with Trustee Rodriguez.
We have not met, and our next meeting is in about 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Subcommittee of Social Justice, Trustee Martinez, please.
Nothing new to update this month.
Okay, moving on to Buildings and Grounds, Trustee Cathcart.
We have a meeting scheduled for next week.
Thank you very much. Finance and Assurance, Trustee Gomes.
We did not meet, but we plan on meeting next week.
Personnel, Trustee Gibbons, please.
We met last night as a committee and only discussed agenda items for tonight and a few things that were in the past, but nothing new.
Thank you very much. Negotiations, Trustee Verselli.
We haven't met. We're waiting on a date for the RPSA. Right now was May 9th, I believe, but I don't know if that worked out for everybody.
Thank you very much. And then last but not least, policy, Trustee Martinez.
We have not met since the last meeting, but we plan to meet next week.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thanks so much. I'd ask for screen share. And as is our new or renewed practice, I'd invite Ashley Montoya and Diana Tenzaneka to the podium, two of our juniors who are going to help me deliver the superintendent report. Just bear with me for for both Ms. Lyon and O'Connor, I'd like to go ahead and present a slideshow while the camera is on our two juniors to deliver their address. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Montoya, junior class treasurer.
And I am Diane Tanizaka, junior class secretary.
We would like to start with a recap of student happenings in the last few weeks at RPHS. Just this last week, our students put on an amazing show, Newsies. Thanks to the help of our play director, Ms. Curtis, our young actors and actresses really wowed the audience. Our school-wide volleyball tournament was a hit. Student government sold over 200 tickets for spectators and had 20 teams playing. It was a great show of school spirit and all attended really enjoyed the evening. Our guidance department has been hosting Future Fridays where students grades 7 through 12 can sign up to attend an informal session from a professional. In the last few weeks, there has been a software developer, lawyer, and a plumber. This Friday, there will be a makeup artist coming to talk to the students.
Today, the March Student of the Month was announced. For middle school, it was Jaylee Rodriguez and Luis Alamanzar. And for high school, it was sophomore Shirley Peralta Ortega. We would like to congratulate them for their hard work and display of good character. As the third marking period closes, all students are gearing up for end-of-year events. In the near future, we look forward to the National Honor Society induction, multidisciplinary honor society induction, prom, field trips, sporting events, and end-of-year dinners.
That's all.
Thank you.
Can I just step in and say one thing real quick, President Fernandez? If anybody got a chance to see the play, it was a great job. But Mrs. Curtis is retiring from the play. So I'd like to just give her a quick hand because what a great job she's done for years and years for all the kids and all of us and entertained us. I believe they dedicated a plaque to her down at the stage and it was a great job once again. So just want to give her a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you for your comments.
So I tried to leisurely go through the play slides there. This presentation, like all of them now, will be placed at the superintendent's report available on the website. But there were a lot of slides for Newsies. So some of the other things that went on, it's been a very active month. We had a job fair where most of our administrators showed up this past Saturday and represented Ridgefield Park School District really well. And see our administrators along with Little Ferry administrators trying to recruit new talent. This past Saturday, the mayor led the charge on inviting community members, including 4 of our own students and families, to go ahead and plant wildflowers at the new nature trail that's out next to the high school. It's great to see the kids and the community come together and build a trail. It's still closed to the public from what I understand, but they're building for the future there, which is exciting to have right in next door to us. So that happened this past Saturday. As I understand, there will be another day for an opportunity to do that. There was a fashion show this past month, and I'll end with Lincoln Murals. There are a lot of enriching activities that are going on. This comes through the ESSER funds and some of the clubs after school for both K through 6 and 9 through 12. There's actually a new club that is on the agenda tonight on a resolution that we'll be approving. And that continues this kind of good work. And lastly, we had kindergarten registration on Monday. This was really an opportunity for us to get ahead of kindergarten registration, which in the past couple of years during the pandemic has not allowed us to meet our students early or have our teachers meet them or have them screened for what they know. And so the past 2 years have been unfortunate. Our kindergarten teachers start out the school year not really knowing their kids. So there was a great push led by some of our administrators in the district you saw, and we had 38 families show up on Monday to fill out kindergarten registration, and now we get to know them, invite them into our district, have some socials, And it really puts us in a much better place than we've been during the pandemic. So I was pretty excited about that. And that is the end of the superintendent report.
Dr. Haines, just one quick question about the kindergarten registration. Where was that held?
So that was at the Elks Club because it was we set it up. There was a committee to set this up to be thoughtful of how we could entice our kindergarten families in a comfortable environment, but offer, as you've seen in past resolutions, free pizza and food and a chance to enter a raffle and gift cards and everything we could to get those families in. So we had it at the Elks Club. And again, it will be followed up by inviting those families and students now back to the schools where they'll be to meet their teachers and have more socialization.
Thank you.
Dr. Haynes, is there going to be another registration or is just that one?
Yeah, so there will be another one. We anticipate our kindergarten class will be about 90 families. So we did about 40. Like I said, we're very excited. But in the past 2 years, the registration, families have registered for kindergarten very late in August and September, but we will continue registering them.
Where will that be held?
That I will, Mrs. Rodriguez, I will get back to you on that one.
Activities that you mentioned, is that in addition to the greet and meet that usually occurs late in the summer, I believe?
Yes, because again, we'd like to do more of the screening type of activities prior to late in the summer.
Would you please elaborate? What do you mean by screening?
So I'd rather elaborate when I could present more information about additional kindergarten registration and put it into the context of some of the other activities that we're looking forward to with both pre-K and K. So if it's okay with you, I'll come back to you with a more contextual presentation to answer that.
Okay, no, there is no budget presentation tonight, so I'd like to move on if we are okay to the state monitor's report, please.
Sure. In regard to the legal fees related to the pending litigation with Dr. Bender, the Porzio Board Attorney fees are now at $61,461.85. The state monitor's attorney fees are $1,344, and the Summit Risk Insurance Company attorney fees remain at $5,000 for a total of $67,805.65 through the February 2022 billing. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. I'd like to move this time to citizen comments on agenda items. I believe there should be a sign-in sheet. If not, we can go forward in an organized fashion, please.
There's no sign-in. I didn't see any. Sure, Dawn Dwyer, 199 Bergen Turnpike.
Thank you so much.
I have a question regarding P193, the resignation of Miss Barbara Catala. I wish her all the best. My son has spoken of her very highly. But my question is there going to be a replacement in that classroom? Do we have an answer for the question?
Yes. All I'd say is yes, there will be a replacement in that classroom.
And will it be an immediate replacement?
I will need to confer with other administrators in the district on that one. Teachers' aides, I don't want to answer that without the assurances that we have a teacher's aide ready to be hired and put in the classroom.
Okay, because my understanding is that there's a long-term substitute teacher in that classroom right now, in which my understanding, I have asked the question, I have not gotten a direct answer, that is not certified. And they are leaning on these two aides that are in the classroom for consistency. And now there's only going to be one aide in that classroom that's familiar with the children. So that's my concern. That's why I'm hoping that, either they find a more permanent replacement with the qualifications for a special needs classroom would be my hope.
And I hear you, and I appreciate the question and your concern here. And I'd rather get a thorough answer and get back to you about
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Do we have any more, citizens' comments on agenda items?
Hi, Janet Malool, 163 East Grand Avenue. I'm on faculty and program, I guess. FP 113. I'm curious. I totally understand and agree with the extended school year for children that are in need of supplemental instruction, so they can be more successful the following year. But I'd like to just make a comment that I'm really hoping, I'm looking at this where you're gonna have K-5 sitting in a classroom, most likely a hot one, for 2.5 to 3 hours of instruction. Half of it, I'm assuming, is math and half of it is ELA. If it's going to be the same program they've got all year long, my gut tells me you're going to not have the results you're hoping for, number one. Number two, as far as math anyway, I can relate to, you're going to have kids so turned off that it's going to be a problem. So I'm really hoping that whoever is designing the program for the summer is creative and helps to put it in a perspective that the kids can actually enjoy the time and not be sitting there either doing worksheets or on a computer that's going to keep generating questions for them, et cetera. And that's pretty much my concern about the programs. Is there an answer coming there?
You've given me a wonderful opportunity to respond, so I must give you an answer, Mrs. Malool.
Okay.
I think the best answer is please come visit this summer. This will be similar, not an exact cookie cutter of last summer, where we had math instruction followed by Meadowlands opportunities and inquiry science, and there were some dance programs, and there were people who pushed into the classrooms for perseverance and persistence and health and wellness. And it was awesome. So I'd ask you to look at the superintendent report. I think it was 2 months ago that had the preliminary Meadowlands schedule where it was interspersed with math and ELA and those Meadowlands activities. But I'd also come visit in the summertime. You need to see what the kids are doing and how excited they are.
Okay, because when reading the way this is written, it looks the way I described it. Okay, and then it says may involve additional field trips outside of the hours. So the way I'm reading it and having tutored elementary kids in this district over the years, I'm like, my heart is just like cringing here over, I hope this is not having them sit for hours, because if it's one thing I've learned, kids that struggle in math, when you start doubling and tripling the time and it hasn't changed, it's still the same drudgery, it's a total turnoff. And I don't want to see that happen in summer programs. So I would be happy to stop down once the programs are in and see what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Dr. Haynes, can I ask a follow-up question on, with regards to Ms. Malool's concerns? Do these programs for the summer have, by the time the summer comes, have actual lesson plans that are followed?
Yes, actually, there's a whole website that we created last year where you can still find those lesson plans that were up for Meadowlands, ELA, and math. So what the process here is, the board approves the programs, and next month, after we do postings for all the teachers and assignments, you'll see part of those postings include summer coordinators and people who plan these programs. And so you'll see that roll out in the resolutions that come out next month to approve faculty and staff and the job descriptions.
And a final question, do we do any, I don't want to overuse this word, but any outcome study on, customer satisfaction? How do the kids feel about the programming? How do the parents feel? The kids came home, what did they learn? Are we studying anything in that way?
So we do checks every 2 weeks about the status and the updates, and if we can improve the student instruction. We do that to make sure that we're improving our programs for individual students and differentiated instruction. However, I hear your question about satisfaction surveys and exit surveys, and you and I both agree we can do a better job of that, and that might be something nice that we add this summer. Yes.
I'm a little bit confused. So are you planning on combining the Meadowlands program that occurred last summer with the math and ELA intervention program? Weren't there two different programs?
So for Mrs. Rodriguez, so for example, in any typical day, and again, the schedules are still up from last summer, Monday through Thursday, a student would come, and I forget the exact time, but would come to a period of time for ELA instruction, and then they'd have a break to do maybe a Meadowlands inquiry project or a dance exercise, and then they'd come back to instruction, and then they'd go do something else. So it was that kind of schedule. To me, that's not separate programs. That's similar to the school day when a student has a set time for ELA or math and then has a break to do a different activity.
Dr. Haines, how are the students, presumably this is not open to all students. How do the students qualify, or is it that you sign up for, are we choosing which students participate in this?
So we can't reach out to every student. The grant, especially Title I, requires a school district to identify students of need, and we do that through a few different assessments, generally performing below grade level, and that's what the grant calls for. The people who supervise the grant at the county level observe this information carefully about who is identified and targeted for need, the money that is used to pay for those teachers and the programs, and making sure that students are more successful and the outcomes are better. All of that data must be reported for Title I.
In line with what Mrs. Rodriguez was asking, is the Meadowlands program available to students that are not in Title I? I thought that was more of an enrichment program and less of a
I'm sorry.
remedial.
So there are actually 3 different Meadowlands programs. So actually 4, if you look at them all. This would be better if I pulled up the presentation from a couple of months ago, but
There was the summer academy planning that was
correct.
enriched 8.
Well, so the Meadowlands comes in, and we partnered with them to provide let's call them intervention activities during the regular period in the morning. And so they may choose different popcorns, or they may make tea bags out of different herbs, or they do healthy living. In the afternoon, there's an opportunity for the food truck and the food lab to come and demonstrate hydroponics and other kinds of science inquiry projects. And that's open to everybody. So families can come, students can come. That's not title driven, that's enrichment activities. And again, we're looking this time to have families back in the evening so that they can join their students and learn with their students of some of the projects that they did during the day as more of a family enrichment, again, open to everybody. So
The summer academy program is open to all students. That is different from the extended year program FP 113, because the summer academy planning doesn't have that literacy component, is more of inquiry-based, hands-on science investigation. That's what I'm thinking. And then the FP 113 is a different summer academy with the literacy component and with the Meadowlands investigation. And then there's another one, math, literacy.
You're Mrs. Rodriguez, you're explaining it better than I can. You're doing a great job. So I think of it through different buckets and containers of the funding that we receive. Title I is for K through 6 for students who are performing below grade level, who have a targeted need, and again, who we report data back to. Title IV, which has the same kinds of things and is generally credit recovery, or that could be enrichment in grades 7 through 12. That's generally Title IV. And again, those are for students not just who are at risk, but in danger of not graduating due to credit loss. We have enrichment programs though for 7 through 12. So last year they did the Islands of Discovery, where those students created small islands and then floated them out in the Meadowlands so that animals and birds could land on them, and they got a sense of the environment at the Meadowlands themselves. And then the grant provides CRISA 2 and ARP funds. And those are, they can be Title I through 4, but they can also be used for enrichment. So I showed you the mural of the students working on the mural at Lincoln School today. That's paid for CRISA, that's open to any student, that's an enrichment activity. A lot of the clubs that we're running at the elementary school, and they may be language-based, but they're clubs open to everybody. They're not title-driven, and we're not constricted to using just title funds on those. We can use CRISA and ARP funds because they're meant to re-engage students and get them back into learning and inquiry. So those programs are open to all students.
And just one quick question on FP 114 Title III. What age group does that cover, or grade level?
Sure. Title III is K through 12. So Title III is usually ESL, right, English language learners, ELLs, and specifically meant, we really try to support those students in developing language acquisitions.
Thanks.
Spending so much time on this right now. Says as building availability allows. I'm assuming that's to accommodate for improvements to the building.
Correct. I made sure that was in there, again, in discussions with Ms. Grabstein and Mr. Demikoff. You're well aware that we have HVAC systems and other building improvements. Working with the architect, the members of the Buildings and Grounds will be meeting about that next week as the committee. And we need to be mindful that there are two priorities for buildings as we go into the summer. One is for all of the credit recovery and enrichment programs, and the other is to improve our facilities.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody to promote, Nancy? Please do.
Hello.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Hi. Jennifer Schmidt. My question is regarding FI.
I'm sorry, can you, your name and your address, please?
Yes, Jennifer Schmidt, 138 Fifth Street. Am I?
Yes, floor is yours.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's hard to hear. Regarding FI 229, Comprehensive Health and Physical Education presentation. My question is, that presentation I see has a date to be determined. Will that presentation be available to the public to access, or is that just a private presentation strictly for the Board of Education?
So I need to talk to the members of the Board of Education. I need to talk to the trustees about that. But the plan right now is that it would be an open public meeting for the consultant who's named in that resolution to come in and inspire and educate the board as well as our public. But again, I have not had the opportunity to talk to trustees about that.
Okay, and I guess that's my second question about that is, guys, shh, sorry. That's why I'm not there in person. My second, but hang on, Ray. I'm sorry. Ray. Sorry, one second.
Would you like to come back, Mrs. Smith?
Second question would be, sorry, I'm here. The second question is just, will they just be covering the state, the changes to the state guidelines, or will that curriculum that the state has suggested? Like ways to implement this?
Yep. So that consultant is hired exactly for, you said, the second reason, because we realize there are concerns with some of the implementation of the new curriculum, which schools are required to implement in September 2022. And we want to be an educated and informed public about that curriculum. And it's better for us to go out and seek wise counsel and consultants, especially this one from Rutgers, who has a great reputation in the state about coming in and informing and educating our community about these new standards.
Mrs. Smith? Do you have anybody else to promote?
I'd like to just say thank you to Ms. Schmidt and all the parents out there who are wrestling with little kids right now and are taking the time to be at these board meetings. These things are important.
I second that, and you don't have to apologize, Mrs. Smith.
Good evening, Christina Ramos, 382 Teaneck Road. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, hi, good evening. I just have a question, response in regarding to something Mr. Haines just mentioned about the enrichment program and the priority. It's for the enrichment program and whatever building grounds projects that may be happening throughout the summer. With that said, we've promised our facilities to different people, organizations, such as the RP recreational, which we already know that's kind of a giving because, you know, we should be working hand in hand with the RP recreational. But we also hurry to, approve the RP camp as well, among some other things. So if the priority is for the enrichment program and whatever other project may be happening in and around the school buildings, then why did we jump to approve these use of facilities to outside, I don't know, outside organizations? And also the Meadowlands that was done the previous summer was inclusive for all children. So I'm a little confused that this is now some kind of a joint program that's going to be a part of the program for the students that are going to have to come in for extra help who are behind. Is that what I'm understanding? I thought the Meadowlands program was an all-inclusive for all students as a summer extra activity, bless you, program for all. Am I understanding this is now just going to be exclusive for those who are going to be in summer school, if you want to call it that?
No, we're going to run it exactly as we ran it last year, which is both for our title students and also enrichment.
Oh, okay, so it is a separate program.
Yeah, there are multiple programs and partnerships that we have with the Meadowlands. 5 off the top of my head. They come in and help us with the Title I. They come in and help us with middle school enrichment in afternoon family inquiry and family evening nights, and visiting the Meadowlands, taking students on a bus trip to the Meadowlands for inquiry science. So I think we're actually adding one. So there are multiple.
For all students, correct?
Again, some of them are title driven with title funds, and some of them are for all students.
Okay, and again, like going back to the question, if at any time this conflicts with promised space that was given to other outside organizations, what are you going to do? Since you mentioned yourself that the priority for space will be for enrichment and building ground projects. Like if you don't have the space, then what are you going to tell the people you promised the space to already?
I just wanted to talk the facilities use at Lincoln. If you notice, those are in the evening when work would not be taking place at Lincoln School. But also there are some projects that might involve asbestos abatement, and we just kind of have to take it as it comes at this point. But we will, juggle and shuffle the kids around to find adequate spaces so that these programs can continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, with the screen name Dwyer, we're gonna have to get back to you, maybe on the off agenda items, we'll include you, but we're having technical difficulties in promoting you to as a participant. Moving on to resolutions and closing citizens' comments on agenda items. Faculty and programs with Trustee Rodriguez, would you do the honors?
I so move. FP 107 and through, excuse me, FP 107 through FP 117.
Second.
Are there any questions on FP 107 through FP 117? Seeing none? Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mrs. MacNeill,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes. Moving on to finance and insurance, would trustee Gomes do the honors?
I so move FI 218 to FI 229.
Second.
Are there any questions on FI 218 to FI 229? Seeing none. To remind trustee Phytros that there are abstentions for him on 219, 222, 225, 226, 227, and 228. Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes, excluding the extensions you mentioned.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mrs. MacNeill,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes. Okay, moving on to consent agenda, CR 33, I so move.
Second.
I have a question on CR 33. It references that rental fees will be established in accordance with district policy. Do we have a plan to address the district policy?
We actually do. Dr. Haines created an ad hoc committee so that we can reestablish the policy and regulations and then, charge, whether we charge or whatever it is that we decide to do, that we are consistent and our actions are in accordance with our policy and our regulations.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on CR 33? Mr. Phytros, there are abstentions for you in the consent agenda. Seeing no more questions, President Fernandez,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros is abstaining, Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mrs. MacNeill,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to personnel, trustee Gibbons, please.
P92 to P206, I so move.
I second.
92, right?
Yes.
Are there any questions on P192 to P206?
I have a question on P201 and 202. We seem to be hiring an awful lot of bus drivers and aides. Did we pick up more routes?
Actually, what we're going to try to do is to, because the part-time drivers are working too many hours to be in accordance with the labor laws, we're going to try to split our routes and use some of the Leonia drivers and have Leonia use some of the hour drivers. So we still have to establish those routes and, make sure that they work and that the schedules work. But it's definitely going to be, hopefully we'll reduce the budget and we won't see as much overtime But we'll have to see how the routes are established and how it works. It's really a trial. It's the first time that we're doing this, so it's really pretty much a wait and see, and hopefully it will work.
So there's going to be changes now on the bus routes and the aids on these buses?
Correct.
Are these Leonia bus drivers that we're hiring?
Hiring them, but they will be Ridgefield Park employees. They'll be going through the onboarding process in Ridgefield Park. So they'll be part-time here and part-time in Leonia.
So each bus driver will not be working more than 4 hours in each district, correct?
More than 30 hours, which is benefits, right? Benefit, the threshold for benefits eligibility.
So when is this going to take in effect? The change in bus drivers and routes and aids on these buses?
We were just waiting to have it approved tonight, and then Mr. Kilmurray has to work closely with the Leonia bus coordinator and try to establish new routes. Not really new routes. We're just going to be, they'll be doing the mornings, and our drivers will be doing the afternoons, or vice versa, just so that both districts don't exceed the 30 hours per week.
Do busing aids, aren't busing aids attached to drivers? How will they do that? Will the kids, if we switch to routes, will the kids be seeing a new bus aid as well? Leona bus aid?
Yes, that's what's going to happen, because they're working so many hours right now, and we're out of compliance with the labor laws.
So last
Now it
meeting,
goes.
we approved full-time bus drivers because we were out of compliance.
Can I ask,
Why didn't we discuss that when we approved a full-time bus driver? I clearly remember we approved the full-time bus driver, and I asked a question about the aid, and then I was told that this bus driver does work. They work full-time hours because of athletics. So we're approving full-time bus driver to cover the athletics. I have nothing against athletics, but why not approve full-time bus drivers for the other routes?
This is a way to better organize the busing system here, and it's just a trial that we're trying to better organize and be in compliance with these bus drivers and aides.
can I ask, we've talked around for a couple of months, kind of looking into our options with busing, because we continue to invest in it. And we've never really come to any kind of resolutions about how to set a plan and move forward. So kind of along with what Mrs. Rodriguez was saying, we approved a full-time bus driver last month. Now we're trying part-time bus drivers from Leonia. Isn't it time that we take a deep dive on this?
I think as board members, we accept what, our administration and Mrs. Grabstein and, the busing coordinator does to organize this better. And this is one of the things they're doing to do this better. So we're going to hope this works. And this is a trial error. And I believe Mrs. Grabstein said we could possibly save on the budget for next year as well.
Because are we not saving on the benefit end of it, which is a huge saving?
We'll be saving on benefits, and right now they're benefits eligible, but we're not offering the benefits as we should be in accordance with the labor laws.
I'm not suggesting that we hire full-time bus aides or bus drivers or aides for that matter. What I'm suggesting is that we need a better overall plan with our busing. We just keep throwing things at it. We have to hire, we had to change our loop out front. We're talking about investing in software. We we don't even know if the costs involved in our busing is what we're charging other districts to bus with us. We still just keep putting Band-Aids on this.
I know with busing, if we were to get a private company, Mr. Tevez did an audit last year. It would cost us $800,000 more if we were to get a private company.
Was that presented at a board
Mr.
meeting?
Tevez, I know for a fact it was discussed and there was research done on it, and that is a fact.
Okay, but I'm talking about more than just,
I think what Mrs. Grabstein came up with, along with the department, is a new plan, and they're going to try it out now, as far as I understood.
Can I add, I echo that. I also echo that sentiment that it seems like over the past 6 months or the past year, we really are just throwing more and more money at the busing. I don't even call it a situation, but I'm not sure why we wouldn't take a look at this, the way we're taking a look at our use of facilities, the way we're taking a look at our curriculum, the way we're taking a look at just about everything we do in this district. There were many things wrong with this district, and taking a look at them, I think it doesn't cost much, and it might save us, or it might actually end all the questions about some of these programs, because we might be able to actually show that they are working well. And so I'm not sure why we would not look at this program the way we look at any other program. I don't think anything's above. No, excuse me, Chris. I can tell that you're satisfied with the status quo, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about making
Not what
things
I said
better.
at all. I said I
Okay,
trust.
so let me finish my
I trust
thought.
our employees.
So let me finish my thought then. I'm not happy with the status quo with a lot of programs in this district. I think our kids deserve better. And anybody who says that we shouldn't look at something, I question that. I think we should look at it. So let's have Ms. Grabstein do a deep dive. We can hire an outside consultant, or we can do anything. There's a bunch of things we can do for very little money, less than what we're spending on overtime every month, less than what we're spending on Wi-Fi and trackers and all these other different things to coordinate these things.
So can I just step in and say one thing? Because the status quo before we got to our own busing, I was part of that status quo. I was getting my kid picked up at 6 a.m. in the morning. I was constantly complaining. Broken down minivans picking up my kid, being pulled over 60 miles an hour on Queen Anne Road, stopping at Dunkin' Donuts. What else? Yeah, this was before. Blasting music, I guess I thought my kid was deaf, so he was dumb, wouldn't come back and say that. Every day my kid as a 5-year-old would tell the bus driver not to sit in traffic on Route 4 coming back from Midland Park to take River Road, until one day she finally did it and saved him, 25 minutes in the bus. So the status quo back then was absolutely disgusting. When I first started, it was a regular bus. The girl was great, but then the next year we had to, put it out to bid. Lowest bidder comes in and takes that, and it was absolutely disgusting. So I think if you really look to the people of this town being picked up by bus drivers that they know, being picked up and brought to different districts in a reasonable time, not having to do that, to me, then the money that we are trying to save here is tenfold, because you can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on when you have somebody that you can call at 8 o'clock at night with concerns and they're answering, because it wasn't that way. The status quo before was absolutely terrible.
Let's
So
not go back to that. We should not go back to that. We should not go back to that. You're right.
No. You know what, Mr. Vaselli, I do agree with you 100%. I do agree with you, because I was in the same situation too, and involved the police department and a district and the state. But I do agree that we should not put Band-Aids on the issue. We have to look into it. And the thing is that now I'm thinking next week, a child is going to walk on the bus see a completely different aide, completely different bus driver. So yes, we have to look into it. I see both sides, you know, and I get it. I get it. I was the parent who had children outsourced, and it was a disaster. When there was a company that the state shut down and they came to pick up my child. The communication is much better now. I agree. At the same time, we need to look at it and maybe we see that, guess what we're getting is amazing, but we have to look into it. And I think about that parent. I think about that child that is going to go in the bus, see the bus driver, and is going to have a nervous breakdown. It's tough.
Very well said. Yes, I agree with you.
If I could just jump in here for a second. I mean, when I came on the board here for Ridgefield Park about 7 years ago, when you first got these buses back in, I think, 2014, 15, you spent an exorbitant amount of money leasing these buses. Once you leased them, you realized how much it was costing you. Immediately, Dr. Richardson at the time, the late Dr. Richardson, contacted Little Ferry. You started outsourcing we started picking up the Little Ferry kids going to the high school to help subsidize some of the expenses. As you started to go in the second year and the third year, it was a lot of money. And then what happened was you started to narrow down the expenses and start picking up all the Little Ferry busing in other towns, and started taking those expenses from with all these bad bus leases and started taking the whatever $750,000, $800,000, $1 million it was costing, and whittled it down to $300,000 or $400,000 a year. Yes, you do have some overtime. Yes, you do have people working 30 hours here and 30 hours in Leonia. And I think that's just because to circumvent the benefits, because if they work more than 40 hours, you have to provide benefits. But if they're part-time in 2 districts, that's what you're trying to do, is to get around the system and providing benefits to all these people. That's why you're adding more part-time people, is to get around the benefits. So when you look at this from where you were when these buses were purchased 8, 9 years ago to where you are today, you have whittled down the expenses. There is expenses, there is overtime. But from where you were, you closed the gap on a very bad plan at the beginning and whittled down all these leases and got to a point where it's a minimal amount. I mean, you're probably doing busing for $350,000, $400,000, whatever the number is. You couldn't get that service anywhere else for less than $750,000 to $1 million a year. I mean, look into it, obviously, but if you go back to the beginning of this history, I think it would give everybody a service to see where you started and where you are today. Because look at those leases. A lot of these leases are coming up 2022, 2023. These bus leases are starting to come up. So you may need to look at this plan again, but really you have to go back to the beginning, I think, to be fair here. That's all.
I think that's all I'm saying, is that we should be striving constantly improve. And that doesn't mean I'm saying that we need to outsource busing. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to take a deep.
Can't hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me now? You can hear me
Now we can, yes.
I wasn't suggesting that we look into outsourcing the busing. I'm suggesting that we need to have a constant improvement and look at all of the options with busing, not just should we hire a full-time person, should we hire 2 part-time people, but know what all is involved there. And if Mr. Tevis did a study, I don't think that was ever presented at a public meeting. Maybe it doesn't need to be done again if it was done that recently, but I've never seen anything presented at a public meeting on the busing. And to compare it only to, to compare it to when it was outsourced and we had horrible busing. I mean,
I remember that too. I remember the bus coming back down the hill and falling into the high school. So I'm not suggesting that having the buses in the district is a bad thing. I'm suggesting that tying our costs involved with busing to what we charge other districts to bus their students would be appropriate, and that we need to look at all of the ways that we could possibly save money on the busing, because we should be constantly trying to improve it. And that may mean they may come back to us and say, we need 5 more buses. I don't know. But we've been talking about doing a deep dive into this since I've been on the board, and even longer. And I think it's time it's done.
I agree, and I think that should be a thing that we'll be doing on a consistent basis every year as part of the budget process. You're looking at all your expenses. You should be looking at busing every year. We should be knowing what buses are coming up what leases are expiring, what we should be looking at. I agree. I just think that when we're talking about this thing, just really kind of start from the beginning of why we're at the spot we're at, because you had a lot of bad leases. But again, this should be part of a regular annual thing that you're looking at. Just like if you're looking at how many teachers you're hiring or anything else, it's an expense, and it's a big expense. So I agree.
I do agree. The only thing I'm trying to say is that right off the bat, I looked at this as it was a savings, that if we're not paying benefits and we're doing a shared program, that it's saving our district money. So I think that we are continuing to change and try to make everything better. And I just, it came off of about this status quo, like it's horrible that we need to go else. And I'm sorry that I just wanted to bring up that what the status quo was before, but I do agree with you guys.
I mean, listen, it's the best thing that's happened to Little Ferry, because we were averaging 3 lates a week on a minimum with Lecky. We couldn't get to the school before 8:30 in the morning on a regular basis. So it's a great thing getting all the kids in the high school and get everybody start at the same time. It's been very productive for us in getting the kids to school every day. But again, like you said, it's looking at the whole picture. So.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
So I had a
Thank
point
you.
of order question for President Fernandez. It seems like there's a lot of conversation about bringing in a consultant to take a look at our program to help us ensure that we are doing all of the things that we can. And Mr. Feitros mentioned that our bus leases are coming due. So, to look at that as well and figure out how do we approach the leases, how do we approach the routes, the part-timers, I have no issue voting on that tonight because I understand what we're trying to accomplish there.
Thank you, Trustee, Diane.
It's a piece of the puzzle. And I think what Mrs. Orth was bringing up was that we need someone to help us look at the entire puzzle and see if there are any other pieces we need to put in place. So from a point of order, can we add a motion tonight?
I will not be adding a motion. I believe this falls right under our business administrator. That would have came as a recommendation from our business administrator. And at this time, giving her the opportunity, just coming out of a budget, just being in our district 9 months, I'm giving her a chance to get her feet underneath her. So until it comes as a recommendation to the board, I will not be making any decisions on behalf of this board or making any statements for the district to do anything without it being recommended.
I would suggest that you have Mr. Kilmurray come in and explain this whole process.
With all due respect, I think any board member during the new business can put a motion before the board, and we have to vote on it, and we can vote it down or vote it
No
up.
problem. She was asking me to put a motion.
If we could take the vote on personnel, President Fernandez.
Sure. I mean,
A point of order stops the conversation to address the point of order. And the point of order question that I had was, can a motion be added to the agenda? In new business? Thank you.
Dr. Haines would have to recommend it.
Yes.
The two of us would have to recommend it together. So if
Can we look to address this or have something a little bit more put together for the next meeting? Can we at least maybe put a plan instead of trying to rush it in right now? And let's let the business administrator and the superintendent do their job. I mean, we don't really run the day-to-day. Let them look into this and then present something to us potentially for the next meeting, and then we can move forward that way. I mean, I think that we're just kind of forcing them to make a decision. Let them look at it and come back to us. Is that possible?
I don't know that we would be putting details at all. I think the motion would be a motion that we request the administration to look into this and to find a consultant if that's appropriate.
Well, I think that's what we're saying. I think that's what we're saying, for them to put a plan together and present us with something at the next meeting. If it's a consultant or whatever, we made note of it, and let them go back and come back to us at the next meeting with whatever they think is appropriate moving forward.
Harry, how long did you and Mr. Kilmurray work on this?
just recommended recently. So
How long Mr. Kilmurray worked on it?
I believe that Mr. Tevis recommended it a couple ago.
Yes, he did. He did bring it up. He did bring it up. I'm sorry. He did bring it up in the meeting that he did look at it, and it was more expensive than what we're doing right now. But again, I think that if the superintendent and the business administrator can put a plan together and present it to us for next meeting as a course of action of what if it's a consultant or if it's they're starting a deep dive or whatever it is, I think that would make more sense.
Mrs. Wright, I just want you to weigh in as far as the motion. I do agree that this is not a motion for this meeting, it's for a future meeting. I feel compelled to weigh in to state Mr. Demikoff, Mrs. Grabstein, and myself talk about busing frequently and opportunities for improvement. We invite Bobby Kilmurray's voice into those discussions, and I want to make sure that there's not too much of an insular perspective of this conversation. When you look out to see what other school districts have to grapple with during this time of the pandemic for trying to hire bus drivers, getting buses where they are on time, outsourcing, there is a lot of turmoil out there. At the beginning of this year, I reported that our buses at the beginning of the year were 90% successfully on time delivering students. We have issues, yes. We have opportunities for improvement. Part of what Mrs. Grabstein has been proposing over the last month or two, along with Mr. Demikoff, are their Versatrans programs. They're programs that can help us identify how our schedules are running, what students we're carrying, how the performance is with our buses and our bus drivers. Because we don't have that, which means we haven't modernized. A lot of other school districts have these processes and software and other things in place. We're playing catch up a little bit. It's obviously a very hot topic because we place our children on these buses and we want them to be safe and carried to where they get to. And I think for the majority of what's going on in this district, that's happening. So I do hear that we need a bigger plan with the 4 voices that I just mentioned at the table to look at what we're doing and hire a consultant who can assure us that we're doing as good as we could. So yes, Ms. Grabstein and I will be with Mr. Demikoff. We'll be working on this. Can I not say, I think Mr. Fernandez said it really well. We have QSEC, we have the finances, we have the budget going on. There's a lot of things right now where I'm not going to guarantee we'll come back with a consultant and a plan next meeting, but we will work on this and present something soon.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. I just want to add, having sat on a school bus all day today on a field trip, I understand the challenges what you guys are facing. And when you go out and look for this consultant, I hope that the fee for the consultant is not going to be a lot more than the overtime that we're paying for these drivers.
Are there any additional questions on P192 to P206? Mr. Phytros, there is abstentions for you on P193, 194, 198, and 199. I have a first with Mr. Gibbons and a second with Mrs. Rodriguez. Take the roll now. Mr. Phytros,
Yes, except for the abstentions.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mrs. MacNeill, Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth, Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes, but I'll be an abstention on 203.
and President Fernandez.
Yes. Okay, moving on to,
Excuse me, Trustee Gibbons, he made a motion, I second, but I don't think we voted.
Mr. Gibbons
Yes.
and Mrs. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, thank
I apologize. Okay. Moving on to citizens' comments on off-agenda items. If the sign-in named Dwyer was available for promotion? Okay.
Maureen Shield, 56 Brinkerhoff Street. Excuse me?
Can you repeat that, please?
Maureen Shield, 56 Brinkerhoff Street. The Ridgefield Park Special Education Advisory Committee will be having a meeting on Zoom on Monday night. I have information here if anybody would like it to attend. It will be a general information meeting, and Mrs. Gonzalez and Mrs. Van Rudenborg are gonna just introduce themselves and speak. I do have two comments about busing. One, I think it could be, the two part-time could be good because say one of my kids went to school in Mawa from here. So if we have a child going to Mawa and Leonia has a child or two going up there, the driver can work for them in the morning and take the kids up and then work for us in the afternoon and bring the kids home. So you do have the continuity of the bus staff and the kids are used to them for both to and from school. And both of my kids have been taken buses 15 years, I think my youngest one. And we have never had a problem with any of the buses in town. They've been wonderful. I think I have all of the drivers' phone numbers in my phone. So they're really easy to get in touch with. And they're very accommodating because I work in the district. So if they need to bring my child to the school, they bring him to me at school. And they're just really easy to work with and they're really nice people. So thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you
comments.
so much.
Dawn Dwyer, 199 Bergen Turnpike. I sent a letter earlier this week requesting for it to be read at the next board meeting. Being it was not read, I'm going to read it now. I am very upset about the wrongful treatment of my son by the bus service. On 2/15/22, my son came home telling me that there was, in quotes, no adult on the bus other than the driver. The bus driver had to pull over to yell at the kids because they were out of control. To my knowledge, it was an isolated incident. I didn't say anything. On 3/23/22, my son's grandfather got him on the bus. After he was already seated and settled, it was discovered again that there was no aide on the bus. When the driver was questioned, he confirmed there was no aide on the bus and it wouldn't be a problem because there's only a few kids on the bus. When my son came home after school, again, there was no aide on the bus. This is very, very concerning as it is no longer an isolated incident. It is in direct violation of my son's IEP And at this point, the school district has violated every student's IEP that was on the bus, as well as state statutes. Need I remind you that these are elementary age special needs students, not high school, not general education students. This puts not only the children on the bus at risk, but the public in general at risk, as his attention cannot be focused on driving alone. I am in the process of contacting my student advocate, and if the following is not immediately accomplished, then I will be contacting my attorney as well. Please provide me with the following information. I want to know why the busing coordinator permitted a bus to go on the road to pick up elementary special needs students without an aide on the bus. I also want to know what responsibility the driver has for being on the road without the proper staffing on the bus. I want an immediate explanation as to why the bus service violated the law, endangered my son, as well as others. And I would like to know what the district is going to do to ensure the safety of the children on the bus, as well as the community. Thank you for your immediate attention to this matter, as it is vital to ensure our children and community are safe. Nothing to say?
Thank you for your comments. This is obviously something that we need to research. I'd ask that you reach out to Mr. Comrie in charge of transportation. And it's something that Mrs. Grabstein and I will discuss and research and address.
Okay, every time I reach out to Mr. Kilmurray, he never gets back to me. Doesn't matter. I commend the person who gets a phone call back at 8 o'clock at night. But historically, my son was not home by 4:30. And when I contacted Mr. Kilmurray, he said he would try to find out where he was and never returned my call. I think there should be accountability.
I hear what you're saying, and that is concerning. I would also ask Mrs. Gonzalez, who I frequently talk to be in the discussion. So again, I'll be working with Mrs. Grabstein, Mr. Comrie, Mrs. Gonzalez, and discussing this.
I think I would like immediate answers. How would I get those answers? Will they be emailed to me? Will they be discussed at a meeting?
So from your prior question on agenda items, I'd suggested that you and I exchange contact information, and I'd rather just start talking to you personally.
You have my email address. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Janet Malool, 163 East Grand. All right, I'll start off with some positives to kind of make it a little, and then I'll go into my concerns. We've got to have a little bit of levity here. The last green team, which we had in March, Ms. Thiemann and Mr. Savino and his 7th grade civics class attended, and lots of great questions came out. And they are really, really excited about starting to put some environmentally positive things down here. And we actually had 2 of the students come up at the end and asked if they could attend these meetings. And we have no age restrictions, so they are certainly welcome to come. So that was, I thought, very good. Shortly after that, I received an email from one of the students that's writing an article for the Scarlet Quill. There was interest in the Village Art Exhibit, which right now is showcasing our teacher artists here. And I said something about, that we also ask the high school kids to help out with some of our events. And immediately I got an email back saying, "Do we call you?" I said, "No, you're not calling me. It will be arranged through school and the guidance department." So a lot of positives. A few of us came to the play on Friday night. It was great. And in fact, we're actually considering asking 2 or 3, maybe 4 of the leads if they would like to maybe participate in our Summer Arts Fest, even if it's a 5-minute, show there. The last piece on that end is that we have an amazing intern for our Arts Association, thanks to Miss Thiemann, who basically handpicked her for us. She is just, it's like night and day. We had a college student last year, and we have a sophomore this year, and there's just no comparison between the two. She's head over heels doing, like, she reaches out. She's actually attended a meeting last night, was very comfortable sitting in a room of adults and actually giving suggestions or comments. So we have a lot of very talented kids down here in a lot of different ways. And I really hope that we continue to showcase the good. Now, as far as concerns, I have 2 major concerns. Over the weekend, there was a public notice in I believe it was the Record, regarding a possible building, multi-use building going up in Little Ferry, supposedly 158 units and some retail, et cetera. Now, we have no, just like we have minimal control, I'll say, over what goes on in Ridgefield Park. We have no say as far as what's going to be built at Little Ferry. But looking at the communities around us, you look at Hackensack, you look at Pagoda, Ridgefield Park is going to be right there with them. I'm just have that feeling moving forward. At what point do you as a board and we as a community start to think about a 5-year plan? What are we going to do when Little Ferry and Ridgefield Park populations start to grow in leaps and bounds? And when that happens, it's not going to grow by 5 kids here, 10 kids here. It's going to grow by hundreds. And I really think that the time is now to start thinking about this. Because in 3, 4, 5 years, when these buildings are up and we start seeing what the population is, it's going to be too late to scramble to figure out where are we putting them. And I don't know what the answer is to that. And the thought of the amount of referendums and bonds that are going to have to be floated to afford to create more space is, I don't even want to think about it. But it's a reality. And I would also ask that when you do start to think about this, or at least the groundwork for it, please include the public in on it.
Right.
Segments of the public, as we did years ago when they reopened Lincoln School and the addition was going to go on. Several of us served on that committee, and the first referendum went down, and we worked and we got the second one through. So I foresee this being a similar situation. And maybe it's going to mean you're going to have to start really thinking out of the box at an educational level. Are we being forced to revamp the way we use our space? Are we maybe not going to have K-6 in each building? I don't know what the answer is, but it really struck me really hard this weekend when I saw that. And I said, just looking at what's going up in Ridgefield Park, looking at what's going up in Little Ferry and around us, the writing's on the wall. We're going to need space. So I really hope that you consider this like within the year to get something moving on that.
Oh, absolutely. I would like to have our chairman of the Buildings and Ground add to that moment.
If I might, I had a conversation with the superintendent, and at the next Buildings and Grounds meeting, that's going to be one of the discussions
Okay.
on how we plan ahead for what's going on. All the projects, you're right, there's quite a few projects going on.
Yeah.
There's one on Mount Vernon Street, there's 1,500 units. And, excuse me, I don't want to wait to the last minute.
No.
So we're going to discuss and make plans. How do we do this? And have a plan in place so we're not running behind saying, let's split classrooms. We want to be able to have a plan, no matter if it's this board or whatever board is, they can pick that up, say, this is what we have to do. And because of the magnitude of what the building is, it's gonna have to be public input too.
Yes.
Because we're gonna have to keep you informed that we may need a referendum. We may need a lot of things, but it's best that we tell you ahead of time. So we're gonna do that.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. And the other question I have is, how many more years are technically left on Dr. Bender's contract? One. So will we be doing a formal superintendent search? It could include our current acting, but I really do believe that in all fairness, if she does not, depending on how the case goes or whatever, that a search
Be a
should be done.
discussion for the personnel committee.
Okay.
Whenever the time comes, and Dr. Haynes
Mhm.
really collaborates, with us to.
Yes,
when
and
these
I
things
understand that.
Discuss. So, as a committee, we're gonna have to discuss that in the near future.
Okay, I just want to throw that out there so it's on your minds. I don't believe in anybody running unopposed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms.
George, if I can, just, the new master plan for the village is calling for mixed use, which is industrial and residential, commercial and residential. So what they're looking at, and which is a benefit to the taxpayer because you can get taxes that way. That's what they're calling for. So any new buildings that may be approved will be that mixed use type building. So we better be prepared for what is coming down.
Not to get too off topic, but Mr. Cathcart, how long are the tax abatements that these buildings get though?
What the town fathers decide. If they decide to give a large project tax abatements, they will get tax abatements. We have no control over what the town fathers do.
I believe the original Challenger Road was like 10 years.
Do we have anybody offline? Not seeing anybody? I'd like to close citizens' comments on off-agenda items and move on to unfinished business. Not seeing any. Moving on to new business. Make an adjournment to close our public meeting.
Second.